Talk about plumbing. So let's bring on the man of the hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt Holder.
Matt Holder from Epic Plumbing. Good morning, Matt.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. Excellent. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday morning.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, how you got started and all that.
Yeah, so I started as a helper 20 years ago and loved it. And so I kept going with it. Opened up in 2009, so we've been around since then. We hit the ground running, so plumbing's a very busy trade, to say the least. A lot of calls.
I'm guessing it's one of those that you will always need a plumber, and therefore you will always have job security. So it's an excellent trade to get into.
Yes, very good trade. So.
Okay, good. And what do you specialize in?
We do probably about 80% commercial remodels and things of that nature. The rest of it is residential and just word of mouth. Is basically it.
And I understand that even talking with you and some of our other partners, in some of these key niche industries, referral is a huge part of your business as far as word of mouth, because you do such good work. And then their friends tell their friends, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the best way to do it.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's get on with a couple of the hot questions that people usually have when we talk about plumbing. And there's no end. So, again, if you're watching today and you say, hey, I want to know about this, about plumbing, put it in the chat, and then we'll ask Matt.
That's right.
So let's start with your favorite, because it kind of ties into... Mrs. Tuttle has a complaint. It's always about the hard water.
Oh.
So I don't know if you offer the water softeners, but talk about water filtration.
Right.
So it's pretty important. You can do a whole home water filter. If you're looking for more just drinking water, they do make RO systems just for your kitchen sink. My favorite option is just a cheap water softener for the entire house. You can get out, for one of those for about $1,000 or less, probably. That's what I put on my own personal house. So maintenance on them is cheap. Salt is cheap to buy. To me, that's the best option for me. So. But there may be some different scenarios for each home. It just depends on what setup you had as a home, newer home, older home. There may be a lot of variables in there that come into effect.
Okay, so you mentioned water softeners.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, he was saying you can add on a water softener just to your home, a lower expensive one, just because the salt is pretty cheap, so you can replace it.
Yeah.
But other than the softener, just on the general side of just the water filtration, like we have two areas. Like everybody's refrigerator nowadays usually comes with some filter you can put on it, and then you put, like you mentioned, on the sink. We have like a little, I forgot the company name, but we got it at Walmart. It's a little thing you add on at the tap. But you sell more of a system wide, can you, or install one?
Yeah, we typically install them. Usually you can go to one of your big box stores around town and pick one up for probably under $1,000. You can try to tackle that yourself. I highly recommend calling a professional out to do it and save yourself some heartache. But that, to me, is always the best way to go. Throw that in there. It's not very expensive. And it'll probably last you a good 10 years if you maintain it properly.
Okay.
That's not bad. Yeah.
So we're going to continue the water topic trend. And I know the last probably decade, the tankless hot water heaters have blown up.
Yes.
So, so talk to us about, your opinion, what you've seen, versus the old school tank versus the tankless, and the pros and cons, and, what to look for.
So I'm kind of ride the fence on this. So to me, tankless, if you have the right application for it, it's perfect. Older homes, sometimes it's harder to put one in. You may not have enough gas to it. You may not have big enough water supply for it. To me, a traditional tank style water heater can be just as efficient. They make water heater blankets now. You can add additional insulation to your tank's water heater and things to that nature. So
wow,
they are good. Tankless, it does come with one of the cons of a tankless is you do have to PM that system just like you do like an air conditioner. So it's always good to maintain them. You have to clean them out. Not only are you burning natural gas now, but now you're using electricity too as well with the tankless. So you have another utility added to it. Okay. So there's where there's a little bit of extra added money comes in there. Right. You can still maintain a tank water heater the same. You can flush it out, get it cleaned out, and everything, and make those last a little bit longer. If you have to call a plumber out, they can maintain your tank water heater just as well as a tankless water heater too as well.
Okay. And so if your house is a little large in size, maybe relative, but you may end up having to have two systems maybe for two different parts of the house, upstairs, downstairs, for example, or?
With tankless, they make them now. They're so big that they can maintain a pretty good size home. Okay. Say if you've got a 4-bath house, it can maintain one of something that big.
Really?
Anything smaller than that, yeah. Anything smaller than that, it has zero issues handling that much.
Okay.
Okay, so you touched on flushing the hot water tank out.
Yes.
Okay, so I've heard of that. I've never done it.
Yeah, it's quick and easy.
So you're talking about the tankless side. And I know because I've done it on the old school gas powered tanks, or some people have electric version of it. But obviously on that one, how important is it to actually flush those things, and then how often?
And that relates back to the hardness of your water. So if you have pretty hard water, you're going to have a lot of sediment and scale build up inside there. So it's good to flush some of that stuff out.
Okay.
And honestly, if you have pretty hard water, I would recommend at least once a year, maybe spend an hour on it, flush it out, and see what kind of stuff you get out of there. What I use is a bucket with some holes, in the side of it, kind of drilled up pretty high. And I'll run that water in that bucket, and I'll see how much stuff I actually get out to see if the flushing is actually working or not.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay, because I've done a couple things. So I've done it where I've flushed it out, and when I do, it looks like you've gone to the beach. That's what it almost looks like. It looks like white crystallized sand that comes out, and you're just like, whoa. And I've done that before religiously, and the tank seemed to last for a while, and then at some point, eventually your tank will die for whatever reason. So I went out and bought one from the local store, put that one in, and didn't flush it at all. And then at some point, I can't remember what happened because my brain doesn't remember back that far, but for whatever reason, I had to change the anode. I think it was at the top. And some of those you can't change, or they make it impossible to do so. So can you talk about that process? Because that's a little extra on the preventative maintenance side, or just the maintenance side. Yeah.
Yeah, typically you can tell if your anode rod's going bad by the smell. Sometimes it'll produce a really bad smell. And then, to get those out, sometimes it is really tough to get those out. Some people don't want to spend that type of money on repairing a tank water heater when you can go and buy one for, maybe 30% more and get a brand new tank and everything. So that's where that comes into play.
So if they ask you, say, hey, can you change out my rod? You say, yeah, no problem. Or you might just say, well, for a little more, you can get you a brand new system and not even do it.
Yes, I always try to present two options to people. Sure. I can say, hey, here's the price of this, 30% more, you can get a brand new water heater out of the field. So.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's go to what we kind of hinted at the beginning of this, and let's go from the water of heating to the water of draining, and what happens when you have a clog and a plug, and you say, I'll go get that local Drano or whatever at the store and just start pouring it down the sink.
Well, they sell it for a reason.
They put a commercial for it that says, hey, pour it down, see what happens. So tell us a little bit about what happens when you do use a product such as that.
Yeah, so the Drano stuff, if you have a clog, that's usually best for, say, built up toothpaste maybe inside your P-trap, something to that nature. It's not really going to get in there in actually deep clean like the commercials show you. Usually they do make some high strength industrial drain cleaners, but you do have to have a plumbing license to purchase this stuff. It's very dangerous. To me, the best way to clean a drain is a traditional snake. Have a plumber come in and snake your drain line.
Right.
You know, the Drano stuff, it's kind of like, I call it, you know, I sells to Eskimos is what I call it. But, you know, if it does work for you, you got lucky. Congratulations.
So the stuff's toxic. I mean, it's terrible on your skin. It's corrosive. So stay away from it if you can. Okay, gotcha.
If you can, yeah.
So let me ask you this. I had a block. Everybody should learn from my mistake. At one point, I got into the whole juicing fast, and I had pulp in the juicer that I was just throwing down the sink because I wasn't thinking. That stuff turns into basically glue in your pipes, you know, once it gets past the sink area under your slab. And, of course, I didn't put two and two together, and it started backing up in the kitchen. And then the tank is kind of in the corner of that for the overflow for that hot water heater tank is got that entry tube. And it was backing up there, and all of a sudden I've got lettuce on the floor. I'm like, where did this lettuce come from? So obviously I learned the really hard lesson: don't put your pulp of your fruit and vegetables in the sink ever. But I tried snaking it, and I had zero success. Now, what is your thought? And maybe I got lucky, but I bought one of those balloon things you could put on the end of a water hose. And you stick it down the tube and you turn it on, and then it expands, and the force of the pressure just goes through, and it just blasts it until it builds enough to where it just shoves it out. Is that can that be damaging to the pipes? Can that cause cracks or leaks in other areas? Kind of explain that process.
Typically it won't. Those actually do work pretty decent. The only fear I have on those is if the clog moves further down, you may blow water out somewhere else inside your home, which in turn flood your house.
Right.
So typically with that stuff, if you have grease in the line, in it, food buildup, stuff like that, they do make what they call a jetter that we can send down there, and it's just high pressured water is all it is. And it cleans the walls of the piping and everything else. And that usually will flush out your lines really well too. But the little power ball that you're talking about, yeah, we've used those as well. We typically try to use them outside the house if we can, just to get a good cleaning on a line. But in your case, it did work. So, you know, it's a plus.
You know, sometimes, you know, you can do dumb things and get lucky. So, hey, woohoo, you're getting lucky.
All right. Oh, my God.
All right, so let's go to another common thing that people often either debate about or just do instinctively because, hey, the commercials told me to.
Right, and that would be the tank cleaners, the do's and the don'ts.
For the toilets.
For the toilets, yeah. Toilet tank cleaners.
Yeah, so the cleaners we recommend are the ones that attach to the bowl or go inside the bowl. They make them now. There's little sticky ones that go down inside the bowl. They stick there. Used to, you could go to somebody's house and you'd see blue water coming out of the toilet when they flush. So that's a little tablet they put in the tank, so it flushes the blue down every time. That actually voids any of your warranties on any of your parts. So there's very fine print in there on some of those manufacturers that say no tank additives can be, present in this tank for failure. So if it goes bad, they won't warranty anything. So if it rots out one of your say a rubber gasket on your toilet and floods your house, they are no longer responsible for that because you used the tank cleaner. So we highly recommend not to put anything in the tank.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, yeah, because that was quite common where you would see the blue in your tank.
Yeah,
the toilet bowl.
And I've used them in the past, and eventually it causes like the bolts in there to rust because it eats away the protective coating and, like you said, your parts. And of course, you guys can go and usually buy the replacement tank parts at a local store. Man, I had one toilet. I don't know what the problem was. I'd replace part after part. Sometimes they would work. Sometimes they were janky. I suppose somebody just returned it and it was already broken. Dude, the frustration, I couldn't do your job just because the frustration on one toilet for me, I was ready to throw it in the trash. And to the last time I did. I said, you know what? I'm done with this toilet. I'm done with these parts. I'm done making the trip to the store. I ripped the whole dadgum thing out, and I just bought one tank toilet, which included. And actually, go into this because I had, this house was built in 2001, so I had the old school toilets in there, and now, of course, they make the. I hate to say low flow because when you think of low flow, you think, well, my stuff's not going to flow, with no push. So kind of go into that popularity changeover and besides the economical, or the environmental idea of saving water, just talk about how the mechanics that are different inside of the toilet tank parts are different and why you may want to upgrade or change your toilet out.
Right.
Yeah. So the EPA's got a hand in all that, just like you said. And it's everything now is water savers. So that goes from your toilets to your shower heads to your faucets. Everything is now regulated to only spit out so much water, to flush so much water. Traditionally, our water savers for me as a plumber was a 1.6 gallon flush, but now I think they're doing 1 gallon flushes. So
wow.
Yeah, so you can update those parts. You can replace a flapper or something to that nature inside your tank that would actually allow just a little more water flow to go down with that.
Okay.
For me, it's just not enough water to actually flush the toilet. But,
1 gallon for sure.
The scientists have done the work, and they say it is enough.
Right. I was surprised, but I did notice there was a design difference in the toilet itself, I think, to accommodate a lesser volume of water and still get the job done. Because I'm like you, when I first put that in there, it's like, there's no way all this is going to, be fine. Yep. And it turns out, I don't have it. It works. And I was like, okay, I'm a believer, on the one button, 2 button option.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on to another topic here. And this was...
Oh, I have one.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I see it here.
Okay, we'll go for it.
Okay, so I'm the cook in the kitchen. I'm cooking, and I'm like, oh, it's just a little bit of grease. It's just a little bit of fat. I'm just going to pour it down my drain. Now, I'm old school, so I would turn on the hot water, keep the water super hot as I'm pouring that down the drain.
Right.
Is that...
All right. Yeah. So
okay.
I think what she's saying is, what should you or should you never pour down the drain?
Right.
Yeah. I recommend not pouring grease down the drain. If you must, I've always been told from a lot of the old timers, cold water is usually the best to wash it down with. Hot water will actually solidify the grease and send it further down the drain and causing bigger problems further down the lines. Cold water will actually plump the grease up, and hopefully, get it past where you need it to go. But I always recommend just taking a paper towel and wiping your pan out real quick with a paper towel and doing away with that. You always get grease down the drain. There's, especially in the kitchen, there's just no way around it. Right. And I sometimes go to people's homes and they say, we do not ever put grease down the drain. And, I try to explain, there may be some just from washing dishes. I mean, it happens. Right. It's not a big deal. So over time, you will get grease in there. I think we've always been told cold water is always the best to wash that stuff down with. So whenever we do drain cleaning on a kitchen sink, I will flush it with cold water as we clean it out to try to help move things along.
Oh, okay.
So,
what is the biggest issue you would normally come across in either residential or even commercial, like maybe where they have a big kitchen at a restaurant or something? What's typically the biggest issue you're having to deal with?
Grease, yeah.
Okay.
It actually is, especially commercial and residential. A lot of times in residential, it'll be more food waste from a garbage disposal, things to that nature that are clogging up the drain. Yeah. Okay. And every drain's going to clog. It's just a matter of when it's going to happen. And then if it does, that's where we come into play. So
well, and I guess even what can clog drains would be even like tree roots around your property. I've heard of that, where your toilets will gurgle because you don't have enough air flow because the roots are just coming in. So
coming in, yes.
Have you seen? I don't know. I mean, it's PVC, for what we can see, and until you go under the slab and under the ground. What do they normally use? Is it still PVC all the way out to the sewer line, or okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so you still can get sometimes encroachment of tree roots where they can either burst through that line or crack it or something of that nature.
They can. Typically, roots, they've traveled the path of least resistance. So if you have fittings in your PVC drain lines and your sewer lines outside the home, that's usually where the roots grow into, are the fittings. They can't grow into the pipe and just, burst through that. So they usually have to put that inside the pipe. And that's where it gets started out.
Have you found that to be quite common? Because there's a lot of trees. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very common around the park.
Okay, so let's shift gears and let's kind of talk about. And remember, as you're watching at home, if you have any questions that we haven't touched base on yet for Matt, just shoot them in the comments section. So let's kind of put this in a perspective on timing to either buy or sell a home, and you're looking at a home. You don't know how the plumbing is done. You don't know anything about it. You don't know if it's a ticking time bomb. You don't know if there's trees in there, like we just said, encroaching on the fittings. So what do you look for in that process?
For me, I want to see what's in the walls, how the plumbing looks. I want to see what's underground. A seller might throw a bunch of brand new fixtures on. They're pretty, but I still want to see what's in the ground. To me, if I'm purchasing a home, I would want somebody to come run a camera down my sewer line and tell me what shape it's in. It's a cheap way to figure out if you're going to have issues or not. That's been one of the things. I've gone to a home and the customer says, "We just purchased this house about 6 months ago." And I said, "Well, you need a new sewer line. I hate to tell you that, but it's collapsing." So, that to me could have been avoided from the get-go if they would have had some sort of inspections done like that.
So you have...
I know there are some home inspectors now that do offer that. So if they do offer that, I would take advantage of it.
Okay, so basically it's like a little fiber optic camera on a end of a cable. That's very almost like a snake, flexible cable. Okay.
Yes.
So, okay, that's good. Now, do you do that, Matt?
We do. Yes.
Okay. So you offer that. So
all right. So if you'd like to get a home checked out in that aspect, that's an option. They can call you up and have that done. Or if they think there's a problem, you'll come out and scope it that way.
Right. Now, you being the expert in plumbing, let's just say there is a collapse and it's the sewer and it's not on, it's like where your property line is, but it's more so the county or the city, however you call it here. Who's still responsible for that? Is it still the homeowner, or now does the city have to pick up that cost? Do you know? Have you run into that?
Yes, we actually just did one that was out of their backyard into the neighbor's backyard. Which the city does, 20-foot easements. Some cities might be 10-foot or something. It just depends on what town you're in.
Okay.
But you still have the right to get to the city sewer main. So you are responsible from getting to their main pipe. So if you do need an entire sewer line replaced, you're responsible for tapping their line and running it all the way back to your home. But you do have some sort of access granted always to get there. Even if it's in your neighbor's backyard, you try to do the best you can do with the landscaping try to keep it extremely nice, just for everyone's sake. And it's a messy job to replace the sewer line, but sometimes you have to. So.
Right, of course.
So since we're kind of talking about the external sewer end, let me take this a step further, because like she mentioned earlier, we started this broadcast, we've got hard water, and there's a lot of calcification that occurs, which your really only visible cue is at the end, right? When all of a sudden your shower head starts to clog up and you have to replace it, or your sink underneath the little screw off thing is all coated up. If it's coating up and doing all that there, is the rest of the pipe and everything else under the house the same way, or just because the nature of how things kind of come together at one endpoint, it all kind of congregates at that spot, and that's where you get most of your calcium buildup?
Yeah, the piping is probably doing the same thing. You get, especially if you have copper water lines underground, you're going to get electrolysis, which, kind of helps intensify the calcium buildup. The scale, anything to that nature, that's going to be in the piping. So, with that is going to be in there. If you do see it, like you said, on the ends of your faucets and stuff like that, your shower heads are going to start to build up too as well. Typically, it's going to keep going back.
Can you actually remove any of that? Is there anything made that actually removes that stuff without messing up the integrity of all of your connections and how everything's done?
I've seen some things advertised out there. I personally have never tried those things. To me, I would almost be scared to remove what's already built up. Because you don't know if at some point, especially if your piping's that old, that buildup might be helping your pipes stay together.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's almost like internal glue. Got a little less flow, but, at least it's still together.
In other words, if you have hard water, get a water softener ASAP.
Oh, yeah. If you want to prevent
calcification.
The
calcification. I think every home should have a water softener, personally.
Well, there we go. She's going to make a law for water softeners out there.
Well, there should. Look at what it does to the pipes.
At one point in time, I bought one of these electrical, and I didn't know if it worked or not. I didn't care. It was cheap enough to where it wouldn't bother me. You plug it into the wall. You wrap coils around two ends of your pipe, and it sends out this electromagnetic signal for frequencies, and it's supposed to break up the building of that. Have you ever messed with any of that? Have you ever seen a house with that or not seen it? And does it work? Does it not work? Do you even know?
Yeah, so I have done a little bit of research. We've installed a couple of those. So to my understanding, it just breaks it down into a smaller molecule to allow it to pass through the piping, the screens, the filters and stuff. If it actually works or not, I'm not 100% sure. The manufacturer of that product says it does work. I've never seen one from, I think it would need more time I would have to put one in and let it run for 5 years and see if that is doing it.
Oh, okay. Do your own kind of study on it.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so listen, we got a good question from the comments, Michelle, and it kind of ties into one of our topics that we want to discuss today.
Right.
And that was slab leaks. And so this is the question that, let's see, was the top one?
The top one?
Let's see. Or is it, it's the top one here, the first one. She said, I've noticed the water spot near my bathroom entrance under the carpet. Could it be a broken pipe under the concrete foundation, or could it be leaking from the toilet? I've noticed a change in the toilet filling and flushing. So common area, you got water in the bathroom. Where's it coming from? Could it be the toilet, or is it a common thing to have something underneath that kind of bubbles up to the surface?
Right.
So there could be an issue with your toilet. What I suggest is, if you're on a water meter, if you know how to open the lid up, I would suggest going in, shutting all your valves off inside the home. And if you are able to look at your water meter, there's a little dial on that water meter. If that dial is moving at all, that may indicate you have a slab leak. That's with your toilet shut off. So,
okay.
So typically, just shut the toilet down completely. So you want to remove that from the scenario because that may be an issue on its own. Then check it.
So let's talk about slab leaks. How you would even, other than the fact that now we kind of have a tip off, which is watch your meter, but then when do you even check for it? When do you expect it? In other words, is this eventually everybody's going to have one, or is this more of a rare thing? Is it caused by something? Is it poor builder? Cutting corners. There's I don't know what kind of things can cause a slab leak.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of times it's usually foundation issues that will cause a slab leak. Copper lines underneath the slab. The insulation that's used to protect the piping, it only lasts for so long. So once that stuff wears out, there may be, the ground shifting. If we don't get a lot of rain for a while, that's typically when I see the most slab leaks, is when we're in droughts for some reason. So I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's the ground shifting and moving, but it definitely could be. But you can look for, like the question you had just a minute ago, the baseboards might be getting wet. The floor might have a small patch of water that's starting to get damp. If you have wood floors, you might notice some buckling that you've never seen before.
Right.
It's just moisture coming up through. So coming through your vapor barrier, which most homes have a vapor barrier under the concrete. Once that moisture seeps through that vapor barrier, that's when you're going to start noticing some moisture inside the house.
So you might have a slab leak for quite a while and never know it until it gets through that barrier. Then.
Right.
Yes, I've opened up some floors that have had, 5-foot cavities underneath them, where basically it's just concrete floating in the air. Where we've had to actually bring dirt in to replace the dirt after fixing the slab leak. It's just something to keep an eye out for. If you're a homeowner, you might do a little test every once in a while.
So, you suggest like once a year, shut off your water and watch the meter and see if it spins? Is that basically the best way?
That is the best way. That water meter will tell you for sure. That dial is so sensitive. There's a little round dial in there. If you see any movement whatsoever, that means you typically have a slab leak. And if you're going to have a slab leak, if you have a slab leak on the hot water side, you're going to feel it really fast on your feet. You're going to, you've got newly heated floors.
So, plus your water bill would also, I'm sure, go up in price if you had a leak. That would be another indication.
Yeah, and if you're on a water well where you don't get a water bill, your switch, you're going to hear that switch going off and on inside your well house, where your pressure tank is, anywhere like that.
Okay, and then so you have to actually go inside, like you drill inside the house to get to the foundation, to the slab, or?
Yes, it's a messy job. So sometimes you have to jackhammer the flooring, replace the flooring, and the whole 9 yards.
Oh my gosh.
What a mess. Okay, but so
that's why we need basements.
I guess you may have said it and I may have missed it. So I'm guessing it's not that common, because that sounds like a pretty invasive fix.
Yeah, we typically, for me and my company, we usually see about 15 to 20 slab leaks a year.
Okay, that's still a pretty good number. Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Got another question. So Michelle's also had another issue.
Yeah. So she says, in my shower, I've noticed that the hot water isn't really hot and gets lukewarm when I jiggle the knob. Is there a cartridge in there that may need to be replaced?
Yes, that's what it sounds like. If it's a single handle, you can get a cartridge from one of the local box stores around town. I would suggest calling somebody out if you've never done it before. They can be kind of tricky. So usually it's just a rubber gasket.
And let's on talking about that cartridge replacement, because I had to do the same thing in my shower, and this is where it turns out we're hiring a plumber to do a particular job, making that being better for you than going to the big box store, because I understand from my own issues. Like, for example, let's just say Delta faucets, for example. Excuse me. There is a commercial version of Delta, and there's a consumer, residential version of Delta when it comes to their parts. One is made far better than the other, and maybe a little differently, to where you might have additional problems or not really solve your problem using some replacement parts, depending on what it is. So, including like a cartridge, for example, there may be an older style model possibly replaced with a newer style model, and I don't know. So kind of go into the parts department as far as different manufacturers, and if that is a thing, and do you have access then as a result to a little bit better equipment to replace?
So the cartridges are the same. From what you're saying, the cheaper version to the more expensive version. What's different is actually the finishes, the body. So I noticed for what you're saying, the cheaper versions, they use plastic. It's like chrome plated plastic, things of that nature. The more expensive stuff is more heavy duty, solid brass. It's probably going to last you a lot longer. And that's what I would always recommend, is something like that. It's weird that they do have two different lines. One's, like you said, more for a consumer. The other is more for, the plumber that is actually going to do your home. So.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so there's sometimes a little bit of a difference. It just depends on what it is.
So Michelle is asking if a slab leak is covered by homeowner's insurance. Would you know that?
In some situations, I believe it is. I think so. I think if it's inside the foundation, I know some homeowners' insurances do cover that. We personally don't deal with the insurance companies on that end of it. Usually, if you're going to get into that, you're going to need to call them directly and get some information from them. Yeah.
Okay. So Michelle, contact your homeowner's insurance.
Yeah.
Just to double check. Am I covered for it?
Right.
If worst case scenario.
That's a great question, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. So what else we've not talked? We talked about.
Well, the biggest one.
What's the biggest one?
When to call a professional.
Well, that's a good point. I'm like, okay, so
when do we call you, Matt?
There's some do-it-yourselfers, and that sometimes get themselves into more trouble than where they started. Yeah. And there's some that's like, you know what, I'm not even going to bother and touch that. Yeah. So kind of, where is the good point here to call you up and say, Matt, come save me?
Right.
I always say, trust your gut instinct from the get-go. Typically I tell people, if you're going to be working with any natural gas, call a licensed professional. Call somebody that's insured. You may have a plumber that that you love, and I wouldn't take on any DIY gas if you're not licensed for it. There's just too many accidents. Drain cleaning, I've seen some horror stories, or heard some horror stories. I've seen some horror videos of people trying to drain clean themselves with equipment. I would strongly suggest you call a professional out for that. Anything like that. There's things that homeowners can do themselves that, like changing, fixing aerators on the faucets. Or I've seen some guys actually change out their own angle stops to that nature. Their supply lines to the toilets, or repair their own toilets and stuff. Stuff like that. If you're comfortable doing it, great. If you're not, just remember, if you can call a plumber, you can, because that work's going to be warranted and covered. So if there's ever any issues, that's when I would personally call somebody out.
Okay. So and sorry.
No, go on.
What would be the biggest call that you get then in that case to say, hey, come out and handle this for me?
So far, it's been sewer cleanouts. We come out and do drain cleaning and stuff like that. We do quite a bit of that stuff. And then occasionally from that, people will say, hey, I want to remodel my bathroom. So, that's probably the other 10% of it.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. And then I know there's always going to be some weird things. And just throwing this out there because I had to deal with it recently. There was this racket going on. It was like somebody banging on my pipes, right? And there was it coming from inside the wall. And I was like, it was a harmonic musical, thing. I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I'm freaking out because it's starting to get louder. It's banging. You can hear the pipes just doing this. I'm thinking they're all going to burst. I'm going to have water coming in every facet you can think of. So I guess the issue was there's when you go, because we talked about shutting off your water, right, to check out for leaks. So I would often go on vacation. I would turn that water shut off in the closet, and that would be the end of it. So two things I noticed in the process of the corrosion we talked about. One is eventually that little shut-off valve will corrode to the point where it doesn't work so well like it used to. It needs to be replaced. But what usually comes with that is another pipe to the right or left of it, which has an arrestor, which is some type of pressure regulator to the home, which can fail. Can you touch a little bit based off of that and how that process works?
Yeah, so most homes you don't have to have that regulator. What we call it as plumbers is a PRV, and that stands for pressure reducing valve. Some homes have to have that. It just depends on the area you're in the city, how close you are to a booster pump. If that PRV fails, you're going to notice a lot of water hammer. If you start to notice around the house, over the years, as the years go by, you're starting to get water hammer, say at your toilet, you might have an issue with the toilet valve itself. So it might be time to service your toilet. The faucet, the same thing. Usually what that means is you're going to have a rubber gasket, maybe going bad, a spring getting weak or something. Water hammer typically comes from a valve opening and closing too fast. So those are things to just keep an eye out for.
And that's how actually mine started. Mine started from the toilet, and I was like, what in the world? And then I replaced the part, and it didn't fix it. And I was like, and then the walls were doing it. It was like it got progressively worse to the point where...
And then I'd water outside.
Oh yeah, you water outside, and then that caused the chain reaction. Like anytime you use water, it was terrible. So,
yeah, there was vibration.
We got one last question here from Michelle, real quick.
Yeah,
and we kind of touched base on this when we talked about corrosion, and was there a good way to clean it out? And you said not really. You said it actually might be saving your pipes. She kind of went a step further, and we didn't push it. But the question is there ever a time you would want to replace the pipes that are getting corroded? Or is it just too much work? You just leave them alone, because now you're having to break concrete to get to them or knock down walls? I mean, how invasive would that process be?
It is pretty invasive. So we have repiped homes overhead through the attic. I try to look at ways around that, because to me, we still get cold enough here in Oklahoma where you may have a freeze in the attic. The piping that they do make now, it's pretty good for that. If you insulate it very well, you can run it, overhead down to all your new fixtures. The most invasive part is sheetrock. You have to cut sheetrock open to be able to get to the fixture. So you're going to have a lot of sheetrock patches. That's always the best way to do it. I would never recommend cutting up all your concrete inside the house, because it's cheaper to replace sheetrock than it is concrete and floors. So that would be the way to go.
And I'll say, just from personal experience, if you want to tip off if you might have a leak in the sheetrock, other than it's being wet but you can't tell it's wet. For example, we had a shower head in the bathroom, and there was ants coming out from it. This is in the primary bathroom. I'm like, why are there ants coming out of the shower? That doesn't make any sense at all. There's no food around here. Well, it turns out there was a little leak that I didn't know about because it was behind the wall. And so when I went to replace the shower head or whatever it was, it literally broke off in my hand. So the ants knew before I did that there was a leak in the pipe, and it was from corrosion, believe it or not. So it eventually just corroded off. But there's a little tip off that might help you. Pay attention to where the ants are coming from.
So yeah.
Well, listen, Matt, it was a great interview this morning. You shed a light on a lot of things, some very good, helpful information. Where can folks find you?
Right.
So our phone number is 405-686-3872. And we do have a Facebook page. We don't advertise out there. It's most of our stuff is word of mouth.
Right.
I think we're the only person we're with, as a partner is you guys, and that is it. So that's pretty much it. They can find you on your page, I think.
Yep. Yes,
in Facebook. So yeah. So that's pretty much it. So we enjoy the word of mouth more than anything.
And then, are you available? You have like 10 o'clock at night. I have a leak, or my purse.
24/7.
24/7. Okay.
Yeah, 24/7. Sometimes my phone will ring at 3:30 in the morning, and if it's an emergency, we have to go.
Right.
That's just the way it is.
Sure. Okay. Good to know.
And is there any last thing I'll ask for? Is there any red flags that you would watch? They don't call you, but they call some other plumber. Is there anything that they should watch for? Because it's you're putting your complete trust in a guy that has a specialty that you'll never even have an ounce of clue as to what all it takes and what's behind it. So what's the biggest red flag to watch for when you are trying to hire a plumber in this industry to fix something?
I always tell people to make sure they're licensed, make sure they're insured. There is a website you can go to check for licensing here in Oklahoma. It's called CIB.gov. That's always the best way. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a good way to find out. And then, and if you just have some questions and stuff to that nature, if you have a small repair but they're trying to sell you a very large job for that small repair, that it'd be a good time to get a second opinion. To me, 3 opinions is always best, and I never go with the cheapest one, but that's just how I am personally.
Right.
I always try to throw it down right in the middle.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I understand there's two ways. Anybody that has a business, there's two things you make the money on. A is the product, and B is the time. So obviously in the plumbing, you're charging for your time, for your service to come out there, depending on when it is. If it's 3 o'clock in the morning, so it's an emergency service call. But then you also have the product side where you can mark up a certain amount. It can be a markup of 20%, 50%, 100%, 1,000%. One of those deals. So I'm guessing as the prudent, that's why you would probably want to get a couple different estimates, just because there's a lot of fluctuation in that.
Yeah, there are a lot of different pricing guidelines when it comes to service companies, and that goes for all 3 trades. It's not just plumbing. So
no, that's right.
And if you get 3 different prices from 3 different individuals, you'll probably see that pricing difference in there. So.
Absolutely.
Because you all use the same tools, you all have the same knowledge, and now then it comes down to just the parts, because you probably all pay a similar price on parts, wholesale, distributors, that kind of deal. Okay, excellent.
And then Matt, so tell us the areas that you cover.
So we cover all of Oklahoma City and surrounding areas. We do go outside of that sometimes. Sometimes our commercial jobs will take us to Tulsa, a little further south, things of that nature. So, but service work, we cover Oklahoma City, Norman, Moore, Yukon, Midwest City, Edmond, all those places. So,
good.
Excellent. All right, listen.
Good.
That was a great interview. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you for your time. That was really informative.
All right. Well, appreciate your time today, and I hope everybody out there got a good, background knowledge of the plumbing industry.
Yes.
So, we're very thankful for Matt for joining us from Epic Plumbing. So, you can find him. He gave you the phone number. You can